Good evening. My name is Elena, and I invite you to listen to a Chinese folk tale, The Magic Painting. You can also listen to my tales in a convenient audio format, without VPN slowdowns and ads on my Telegram channel, the link to which you will find in the description of this video, or in the channel description. I wish you a pleasant listening experience, and sweet, strong dreams. In ancient times, I don't even remember which emperor ruled the Celestial Empire at that time. There lived a strong, smart, and handsome young man named Zhu. He had long turned 20, and he was still not married. "Well," his mother said to him, "the imperial officials have taken everything that grew on our meager piece of land. Who would want to marry you if we can't even feed ourselves?" And on New Year's the mother says to her son, "We have, son, 10 coins left. Take them, go to the market and buy some radishes. I'll make some dumplings." Zhu took the money and went to the market. He hasn't even reached the vegetable stand yet. Suddenly, he sees an old man selling ancient paintings. In one painting, a girl is depicted such beauty that it's impossible to describe. The young man was captivated. He looked and fell in love. Without thinking, he immediately gave the last 10 coins to the old merchant for the painting. The mother saw that her son brought home a painting instead of radishes. She sighed and thought, "It seems we won't be able to eat." And she didn't say a word to her son. Zhu took the painting to his room and went to earn some money, to search. He returned home in the evening and lit a candle. Suddenly he hears a rustling sound. What is that? The young man lifted his head. He looks, and the painting on the wall seems to be swaying. It swayed to one side, then to the other. What a wonder! And suddenly, the painted beauty stepped off the canvas and sat down next to Zhu. The young man is happy, but he's also scared. Then the maiden smiled, spoke, and all the fear of the young man vanished as if by magic. Are they talking among themselves? Their conversation and their love is burning hotter and hotter. They didn't notice how the night passed. But as soon as the rooster crowed, the maiden returned to the painting. He waits and waits for the evening, wondering if the beauty will come to him or not. Evening came, and his beauty stepped off the painting again. So it went on for about a month, and one day the maiden said, "I have fallen in love with you. It's hard for me to watch you work from morning till night, and still live in poverty. I want to help you. Here are 20 coins for you. Tomorrow go to the market and buy some silk threads. Just make sure no one finds out about me." In the evening the beauty said, "Sleep, I'll work." He awoke to noise. "You go ahead and sleep and I'll do the work." The next morning he opened his eyes from the noise and even squinted. The whole room sparkles with precious fabrics, silks up to Atlas. The beauty wove them overnight. The young man was looking at them. He looked as if he were enchanted. Then he rushed to his mother. The mother saw it and froze. He couldn't believe his eyes. Here, the the son told her everything that happened. When the mother heard this story, she was happy, but she was also scared, because it wasn't for nothing. She thought this to herself, but didn't say anything to her son. Jutsi took the silk and atlas to the market and returned home with a pile of money. From that time on, the mother and son lived in comfort, along with the wonderful beauty. But one day, the guards caught the young man. Where did such a ragged kid get such rich fabrics to sell? Did he steal it from somewhere? Jutsi was silent for a long time, but when they threatened him with prison, he told them about the magical girl. The guards didn't believe him. They laughed, and then they let Jutsi go. And here is home. Instead of the picture, there was only an empty frame. And the mother says to Shatsi, I don't know what happened, but suddenly the sky in the picture darkened, and your girl cried bitter tears and said, if your son loves me, he will understand his guilt and find me in the magical land of Siu, and I will wait for him, even if it takes a whole century. If your son loves me, he will understand his guilt and find me in the magical land of Siu, and I will wait for him, even if it takes a whole century. At that moment, Jutsi realized that he shouldn't have spoken about his beloved, even under the threat of punishment. But there was nothing to be done. The young man became troubled. His mother packed him a travel bundle. She put all the money left from the sale of the silks into it. She waved her hand in farewell, and he galloped off to the west. It's hard to say how many days have passed, whether a lot or a little. But all the money that was in the pouch, Jutsi spent. He even sold his horse a long time ago just to pay for food and a place to sleep. But this magical land is nowhere to be seen. Yeah, it's nowhere to be seen. Fewer and fewer young men from the village were showing up. He had to spend the night in the open field more and more often. One day he didn't come across a single settlement all day. In the RTU he didn't have a drop of water, and he had to sleep under the open sky. He woke up the next morning, and there was a small ravine nearby. Joyfully, Juchi ran up to the little stream, but there was no water there. The creek had long dried up. The young man walked along the ravine and suddenly noticed a small hole with water. He went down, sat down, and was just about to take a drink, when suddenly, out of nowhere, a little black fish appeared. Chuchi looked at her and said, "Oh, little fish, I'll drink this water. You won't last an hour. If I don't drink, I'll die of thirst myself. But in 2 days, you'll die anyway, because this water will dry up. What am I going to do?" And Jutsi came up with an idea. He took a cloth, soaked it in water, and wrapped the fish in it. But what was left at the bottom, he drank. I don't know whether he walked a lot or a little. The sun was just starting to set. Suddenly, Jutsi sees the wide river flowing. It's so deep that no matter how much you look, you can't see the bottom. Jutsi was feeling down and didn't know what to do. Suddenly, he remembered the fish. "I don't know what I'm going to do," he said, "and you little fish just swim away." He said that and released the fish. As soon as the fish shimmered in the sunlight, it disappeared into the water. The young man looked to the right, looked to the left, and there was no end to the river. It's as if it's flowing into the sky. And there are no boats? How can I get to the other side? He lowered his head and walked away. He's walking along when suddenly he hears someone calling his name. It must have been his imagination, the young man thinks. Who could be calling him? Yeah, and there's no one around. Chudzi turned around and saw a young man dressed in black on the shore. The young man asks, "Do you want to cross to the other side?" Chudzi replies, "I want to, but I don't know how." The young man says to him, "I will help you with your trouble." He said that the young man broke off a willow twig and threw it into the river. At that very moment, the twig turned into a narrow little bridge. Chudzi was overjoyed, ran across the bridge, and when he stepped onto the shore and looked back, there was neither the bridge nor the young man anymore. Only a small black fish was happily splashing in the water. Chudzi was overjoyed and ran across the little bridge, but when he stepped onto the shore and looked back, there was neither the bridge nor the young man anymore. Only a small black fish was happily splashing in the water. Chudzi went further. He climbed up the mountain. He looks down, and in the valley there's a small village. On its northern edge, a 2-story house rises up. An old monk is standing at the gate. Chudzi sees that the sun is already quite low, and although the monk seems suspicious to him, he decides to ask for a place to stay for the night, and he seems suspicious to him. He decided to ask for a place to stay for the night after all. The old monk furrowed his brows for a long time. He reluctantly agreed to let the young man into his house and led him to the right wing. They came into the room, and the walls were covered with colorful paper. There's a bed and a small table. The monk says, "Lie down and sleep, but be careful, don't touch anything." He said that and left. Chudzi lay down and thought, "What is there to touch when there's nothing in the room?" He thought, and then anxiety overcame him. The young man tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep. He thought, and then anxiety overcame him. The young man tossed and turned from side to side, unable to fall asleep. Suddenly, he accidentally touched the wall with his hand. The young man's heart froze. What is this? Under the paper there was a small door. The young man tore the paper from that spot, and a moonlit path ran across the room. Chudzi opened the door and looked out into the garden. In the garden, a path leads straight to the gazebo. In the gazebo, a little light is shining. A girl came out of the gazebo, and Chudzi saw in the silvery light of the moon that it was his beloved. She signaled him to be quiet. She approached and quietly said, "Here you are. You've come to this land. I knew you would find me. And now let's run away from here. It's not a monk, but an evil shapeshifter who is holding me here with the power of magic. But now I've stolen his magic sword, and I'll kill him if he comes after us." The girl tore a piece of her robe, laid it on the ground, stood on it, and told Chunza to stand next to her. As soon as the young man stood up, the fabric wrapped around him like a cloud began to rise up into the very sky. Suddenly, the beauty says to him, "The old monk is still chasing us, but don't be afraid. Close your eyes and don't look back until I say so. I can handle him on my own." The beauty said this and pulled out the magical sword. At that moment, thunder struck, the wind whistled, and a downpour began to roar. A terrifying scream shook everything around. Then silence fell. The girl ordered him to open his eyes. The young man looks. They are standing on solid ground, and at their feet lies a decapitated werewolf. The young man returned with his beauty to his parents' home, and from that moment on, he lived in pleasure and love.